This is a conversation with Maura Chanz. Mara is an actress, writer, and producer who was named one of 2190's dream-chasing girl bosses you need to follow. We discuss her career as an actress, which began at age 13. We also discuss her time at Spelman, her time working as an apprentice for Mara Brock Akil, creator of Girlfriends and The Game, and working as a creative with our dear friend Yara Shahidi. We talk about getting into the entertainment industry when you're not from LA, getting used to working with people you idolized, why some child stars go off the rails, and my favorite topic, dating. This interview was conducted remotely, so my audio is a little better than hers, but hers is still clear. If you like this, rate, review, like, share, comment, and all that. Here's Maura Chanz. All right, well, Mara, you look great. I was gonna redo our banter, but for the
All
audience,
good.
I said that she looked great, and she told me that her hair hadn't been done in a while, but she's happy it's giving. It's giving.
Yes, I'm glad it's appropriate for the podcast.
Yeah, for sure. All right, so named one of 2190's dream-chasing girl bosses you need to follow, Maura Chanz is an actress, writer, and entrepreneur with a rare ability to connect with audiences. Mara began her career as an actress at the age of 13, appearing on Disney's Ant Farm and numerous national commercials. Mara earned a BA Comparative Women's Studies and Writing from Spelman. In college, she interned for several entertainment companies, including BET. After Spelman, Mara appeared on Gossip's We TV, providing commentary on all things pop culture, and also served as an apprentice to Mara Brock Akil, creator of Girlfriends and The Game. Mara also worked with Yara Shahidi, a dear friend to both of us, as part of Yara's production company. Today, Mara can be found in Los Angeles, where she works as a producer and consultant. So, is that awkward when people read your bio to you?
Sometimes it's just like, oh wow, I've done a lot before a young age, and it's kind of like, when did I have time to do all this? But not really awkward. It's more of like just reflective. It makes me a bit reflective.
That's good. That's good. I don't know. I get awkward. Like when people read out your accomplishments. Not that I'm not gonna act like I have all these crazy accomplishments, but I feel like when people read your accomplishments to you,
you have quite a few.
I have some, but it feels I don't know. It feels like I don't know, like self-conscious. But so the format of this, the way I think about it is there's probably there's definitely somebody out there who's like, wow, maybe looking at your Instagram or has met you somewhere and it's like, wow, Mara, what Mara does is really cool. I want to do what she does. How does she do it? Right. And I think that so, kind of walk us through I think one thing I've been thinking about is that in Hollywood you meet a lot of people. It reminds me of going to college, right? When I was in college, I had a group of 6 of us that were really, really tight. And we were all it was Harvard, so it was mostly white, but we were all black or African or whatever. And I would forget sometimes, of the 6 of us, 2 of us, their parents also went to Harvard, right? But I don't I wouldn't think about that because they just I don't think of them as legacies.
Legacies, right?
Yeah, and I feel when you're in when you're in LA, when you're in the entertainment industry, you'll meet somebody and you'll be like, oh wait, you're your dad's LL Cool J, right? Or you're basically you have an in to this industry, right?
Right.
And they don't always have to be an actor or actress. They could be more in the background,
in the crew, or right.
Yeah, in crew style, and it's but your dad is an elevator mechanic, right? And that's an important job, but your dad's not a writer, a famous writer. He's not so. But
no, my family is not connected to entertainment at all. My mom is in the healthcare space, and as you mentioned, my dad is a former mechanic. He's retired now, but no, I'm actually the first person in my family. Probably not with the first person to have entertainment pursuits, but definitely the first person in my family to be able to turn an interest or hobby into my profession. In the entertainment world.
So how did you first of all, when did you first when were you oh, this is what I want to work in this industry. I want to be in entertainment. This is what I want to do.
Age 9. I met Keke Palmer right off the hills of Aquila and the Bee. And Keke and I actually share a mutual mentor, Asha Kamali, who was at the time Keke's choreographer. And being one from Chicago, Keke's from Chicago as well, it was oh, this is a thing. This is something somebody like me can do. And it was honestly, I probably at the time was a bit obsessive. Sorry, Keke. It's so crazy because we are now friends 20 something years later. But at that time I was just engulfed in what she was doing and oh my God, she's in Hollywood and she's on TV and she's in this movie and she's a young Black girl that looks like me. So I probably had an interest in performing my whole life. I would say my parents will probably credit around probably like age 3. I performed with Isaac Hayes. I hopped on stage at a concert they took me to. My dad would take me to different like elevator conferences, or we went to the bike show a lot, and the bike, the boat, and the car show in Chicago. And I would always end up on a stage doing something. And then around 5, I started doing theater and like summer camps. And so around 9, I was like, oh, this can be a job, which led me kind of to asking Asha, asking Kiki questions. And I had an aunt, a black aunt, if you will, but who was managing some older musical acts. And so she kind of was suggesting maybe, you know, trying to get agency representation and taking training. So I did that in the Chicagoland area really for quite some time until I was around 12. And then I went to an acting camp at UCLA. I really don't recall how we found out about the camp, but it was just like really to expose children to the entertainment industry and like what that was like acting in front of the camera, which is very different from theater. And from there, I went back home for 1 year, and then I went to another acting camp in LA when I was 13, right before I was 13. It was before I think it was my freshman year. I'm a year early, so that sounds about right. I was about 13, went to the camp, and at the end of the camp, we had a showcase for the performers to really just present to different casting agents, also agencies in general around LA, and really to get feedback on your performance. It was not to take your career somewhere. However, a few of us, including myself, ended up getting offers from agencies to be signed and to potentially pursue this career. So my family was kind of left with the question of like, well, she wants to do this. She has this opportunity, but like, we have a life. We have other children back in Chicago. Like, what are we going to do? And thankfully, the woman who ran the camp, her name is Donna Jean Goheen. She was a manager for a few actors at the time, Ali and AJ Mashaka, Ryan Kress who was on iCarly. And she opened her home to me and a few other aspiring performers to live, pay rent. She also brought training to us.
What part of town? Where was this?
I lived in Sherman Oaks. So funny enough, I'm actually up the street now in my life where I was when I was 13, when I moved out here. So I moved into her home. It was very much like a boarding house. Like it was maybe 4 or 5 girls of all ethnicities in a bedroom. A lot of us were doing commercial work. Some of us were on television shows. Some people were recurring, some just as a guest star. And so she really facilitated, me getting my feet really wet in this business. And I stayed with her probably about 2.5 years, like sophomore, junior year. My senior year of high school, my mom actually moved here, just to kind of help out. And I was tired of being in the boarding home, and that continued. I still kept auditioning and things. And I had a deal with my parents when I first moved here that if I was not reoccurring on a TV show, I had to go to college. And so my eyes, my hopes, everything was set on getting a TV show. And it's so interesting when you're in the audition circuit, if you will. You start off with, an audition, you may have a callback, but when you really start doing, really moving forward in the process of auditions for TV, you're taking meetings with people at the network, and it's larger. It's still callbacks, but they become producer sessions, and you're doing chemistry reads, and you really can kind of see the goal in front of you. It doesn't seem as far-fetched. And I had 2 projects my senior year of high school that I made it to essentially, I guess, the final round for those who are not in entertainment, but one of the more advanced producer sessions, and didn't get either of them.
Was it a screen test? Was it a screen
test? Yes, we did. I did a screen test, one for a show that became, 3 projects. One for a show that became Dance Dance Chicago. No, it was called Dance Dance Chicago. It was a Zendaya show, Kick It Up, or oh goodness, it was her first Disney show. It was originally called Dance Dance Chicago. Another project called Zombies and Cheerleaders on Disney. And then a third project called The Walkers, which was a pilot that was being done by the Wayans brothers. So I made it to various stages, some chemistry reads, some producer sessions. Of all of those processes, I would say within the top 3, it's usually by that time you're doing chemistry reads and camera testing. It's around 1 to 3 people.
Okay.
2 to 3 particularly. So when both of those kind of fell through, really all three, there was one a little earlier in my senior year. But when those fell through, it was like, okay, I have to go to college.
You get
I,
to go to college. That's good.
no, I come from a family that's very well educated, but college was not, prior to wanting to do this, it was something I kind of knew I would do. But by the time it was time to go, I was homeschooled for high school for the most part. I went to about 1 year of high school my freshman year prior to moving out here. And other than that, like my life became all encompassed by this industry. Like college wasn't even a thought. Like I just knew by then that I was going to be the star of a Disney show. Like it wasn't even a thing. It was like, yeah, it would be nice to do maybe, but like I'm going to be working and making this dream a reality. And that just, it was not the time for me. And honestly, it's so crazy looking back now. That was over a decade ago. That going to college and not getting those opportunities when I deeply wanted them was one of the best things that could have happened to me. Granted, I'm sure I would have hopefully thrived in the environment in that space, but even as a performer, I would say life experience is one of the best things that can aid to performance. Um, but also I think I wanted it for the wrong reasons. I enjoy performing and I still do now, but I think even the desire for like fame was a thing, and just I don't think my head was fully in the right place. And now in my late 20s, it's very different. I've had such proximity to fame, and working not only with working on the network side, working in marketing, working right alongside talent, working alongside producers. I I have found a lot of admiration for all the collaborators that make talent shine. And I think so often when we think of entertainment, we think of acting, we think of being in the spotlight. But there are so, like, this is one of the most collaborative industries you can be in.
Yeah.
And then also, go ahead.
No, I was gonna say, yeah, you're making me think of like, because I can't imagine like one thing, and one of the reasons I want to do this show is that like we think so much of just like the actors. Like I think that even like growing up, a lot of people think that the actors like come up with their own lines, right? Like they
Come up
just
with
say it,
everything. They
right?
think they cast, they think that they are responsible for a show.
Yeah, and I think that like one of the most beautiful things about working on Blackish was I was realized like this is like a whole economy. Like Blackish is like a small city. Like we have like all the Yara, um, Kayla, Miles, and Marcus, and like they have to go to school, right? So we have teachers on set, right? We have people have to style the like we have stylists because people have to style Anthony
You
and
have
Tracy and like get.
medics on set, people who
And you have
drive on set, like
yeah
everything,
PAs, production
every
assistants.
single industry, every single industry is still a part of entertainment. And I think what you explained, it's so well. It's like these mini cities, it's these ecosystems. And you literally need all types of hands. So you have your gaffers and you have, electricians for people who, may not be familiar.
Yeah, crafty, which is
And
food,
your
like food services.
food, all of security. You have accounting who's making sure these people are getting paid. It literally anything that you can think of that happens maybe outside of this world, we utilize in this business. And so
Right,
there's
or
so
like, the
many
people
ways to
set
be a part
deck,
of
like,
it.
literally sorry, like, set deck, like, people who literally like,
Yeah.
"Hey, like, let's put a stuffed animal in" like, if you're decorating you're filming a children's room, let's put a stuffed animal there, let's put a kid's book, like, people whose job it is just to decorate the set, people who build the set, so, like, obviously the writers, and so, yeah, it's like a whole village, it's a whole ecosystem, and I think because I know you in the context of, like, producing and, like, being more behind the camera, like, I completely forget you had this entire first career as, like, in front of the camera, but I think that's, like, so beautiful because, like, I think people want to get married to the idea of like wanting to be the star, but there's an entire ecosystem behind behind all these people. There's like I said, there's stylists, there's PR, right? You can be you can work in PR, you can work in there's just so many
Law.
like yeah yeah
Every
entertainment
any everything that you can think of can be transferred into the business of entertainment.
right. And I think the other thing too, like, and I want you to talk about like because I came to LA when I was 23 and I lost my mind like in like the scene and like the fame and like oh like where like because I lived in Nigeria until I was 6 like as a kid like Pac, Biggie, Puffy, Snoop. These are like the, Nas. These like bigger than life figures, living like as a little kid in Nigeria, and then like going to college during that era of like Chief Keef, and also that's when Drake's
Yeah.
coming up, and like Party Next Door in the weekend, and like going to LA, and it's like, oh, like, wait, we're going to Drake's house after the club. You know what I mean? Like, what? Like, oh, we're like,
Yeah.
oh, that's just like, you know what I mean? I like was super. I mean, you knew. I mean, well, I guess we met like a little bit after I was like post me being lost in the sauce. But like I was so like, like I can't imagine, like that was me at 23. Like I mean, moving to LA at 23. So I can't imagine moving there at 13 and like being like, I guess two things can happen. You can get lost in it, or you can be so exposed to it that you get over it like faster. Like what was like your
Yeah.
experience?
I think, I feel like the only time I was ever lost in it was meeting Kiki, and I was an impressionable child. Not that she was that much older than me, but like I vividly remember my parents having to sit me down and was like, she's just like you. Like this is her job. And I really feel like I got figuratively slapped out of any type of like impression about celebrity right then and there. I still deeply admire some people's work, but like I don't know these people. This is a job. And the more I'm in it, I realize like this is a job. Like these are long hours, these are these things. And so even coming here, and coming as a teenager, and also kind of I was working. It wasn't like I may not have been the biggest star, but I danced on Victorious. And so I saw Ariana Grande coming up and all of these people where, you're kind of watching them rise into these celebrities. But when you're working alongside of them, they're kind of like your classmates. Like there's obviously like the popular kids at school, but it's kind of, you're not, it is not as impressionable as if you're removed from this industry. So I think coming into it, but also realizing that like I was a part of it in some way and that they weren't different. The only difference was opportunity. The only thing that separated us was somebody get an opportunity. And when you go out, especially when you're auditioning, most of, I would say, the large stars or the people who are coming into stardom now, or even at that time, the Zendaya, China and McClain, Kofi. I mean, it's so many people. We kind of grew up in this together. Like we're seeing each other at auditions. We're all of these things. So a lot of times when a lot of the celebrities that became celebrities, like we were grinding together. So I don't even look at it as any different outside of like they get the job. And when you're up for these roles, you have to remember it's like 1,000 people going out for one job. Like I guess I can liken it to like running for office in high school or running for prom queen or something like that. Like you're all known, like you're all a part of the same thing. Only one person may, be the winner in that, but you're still a part of it. So I definitely feel like coming out when I did, was a really good thing. I don't know, had I not had as much experience and exposure young, what I would have been like coming in my 20s or coming straight from Chicago or not having, having aspirations because I saw somebody on TV versus like when I met Kiki, that was like a personal introduction. Like I got to see, touch, things like that. So it was a lot different than just being inspired based on someone I saw through a screen. And I think that allowed me to see like the humanity in this.
Yeah, I think also one thing you're mentioning is that like you come from a good home, right? I think that like, I mean, recently, like obviously, like Aaron Carter died, right? And there's all this conversation
Yeah.
about people like child stars, right? And like we know child stars, and I think that like I understand why first of all, I do think we probably overstate how much it leads to destruction because we focus on the ones that were destructive, right? We always focus on like the ones who went through a lot of turmoil, but like I don't. They probably do. Like if you went through the statistics, like child stars probably do have a harder time, but I don't think it's probably not nearly as bad as we think it is. But I do think that like one of the differentiators between the child stars who end up spiraling into drugs and depression and suicide and things like that is like the type of home they come from, right? Like the fact that your parents kind of sat you down
Absolutely.
and your parents like, yo, like these people they're not any like, first of all, they were present enough in your life to have that conversation in the first place, and that they had a strong enough relationship that you would listen, but also that,
Yeah.
they would tell you that because I think that that's a thing that gets missing in these like tragic stories.
I think that gets missing, but one of the things that really gets missing for so many is that this is a lot of people's parents' dream. and or it's a get rich, not necessarily quick, but a get rich thing for them. And a lot of times, I know you and I, we both have personal relationships with the Shahidi family. They are all immersed in entertainment, and to see that it's like, if they're not having fun with this, if they don't want to do, they don't have, this isn't Carrie and Afshin's dream for their kids. Like, they have to want to do this. And I think so often you can see that when you go to auditions often, where it's like kids have no desire to be in this. And that's
Yeah,
very much their parents. And oftentimes you do hear, I don't know if anybody's keeping up with like Drew Barrymore, really just in getting in touch with her inner child now because of just kind of the upbringing that she had. Even she came from a family in this business. But growing up in spaces where you kind of, you have to do this. And you don't have the same kind of agency. Like, I think for a lot of us, or like myself, Yara's of the world, it's like we have parents who kind of are supportive of what we want to do.
well,
And
go ahead.
no, go ahead.
No, so I was gonna say, like, I think that's one thing that you haven't. That's one reason you haven't read any crazy stories about someone from Blackish like spiraling into, like all four of them have such, like, they all come from good homes, like, parents involved and just like really good homes. And I think that a lot of times that's what ends up missing in these stories. But yeah, I mean, how that's I can't imagine like I said, like that whole, like, what was there a moment where you were like, I can't, like, I'm in disbelief? Because I definitely had certain moments like that. When I first kind of was in Hollywood and working in the industry, like more on the social side, right? Like when you're working, like I can't like you were saying, like you work with these people, right? So you can't, like, I can't look at Tracy Ellis Ross or Lawrence Fishburne like she's like they're like zoo animal, like the way the public might treat, like if Lawrence Fishburne and Tracy walk down the street, the mall somewhere, like someone might try to take pictures of things and like bother them. It's like I see them every day, or I would see them every day. But I think that like more on the social side, when you run into like someone who you like idolized, growing up, or someone who was like, like I remember like there was this era in LA where like you would go to the Nice Guy or like Delilah and like your
Yeah,
entire playlist, like your entire Spotify Wrapped is literally in the room, right?
right there.
And so
Yeah.
I can't imagine that at like 13, 14, 15, and what like what, and like keeping your head on straight and like keeping focused. Like I think that's one thing, like really focusing. Like I like saying no to like the after parties because you have a chemistry read,
Audition
right?
or
Yeah,
yeah.
you have
Mhm.
yeah, like that takes a lot of responsibility that a lot of people at that age don't have.
Well, I mean, one, there were some rules and regulations to an extent of like living in a boarding house. And so, and like everyone there was like working. So, like, my proximity to people was in a work capacity. Like, I really was not out like that. So I knew the people, but it was literally because we saw each other auditions or things like that. Occasionally, you'll go to birthday parties and you'll get to see some people. But frankly, I always, I wouldn't say always, but probably by the age of like 10 of knowing this is what I wanted to do, it was very much like deja vu for me. Still to this day is. Nothing about my life surprises me. Nothing, I was not too far from Beyonce at like the NAACP Awards. I was working one year and I was just like, huh, like this is supposed to happen. Like this is what I've been working towards. And like these are my peers. Like, I admire the work they do, and I'm even a fan, if you will, but I don't see them on a certain pedestal. I just see them as, individuals who channeled their talent. But I really do see them more as just peers. And the thing you mentioned, being there on Blackish and stuff, eventually you start seeing these people often. So it kind of just becomes normalized. Like being in LA, it's like, okay, like you just see the same few people all the time. Like even if you were excited in the moment and because you're in it, you can't be too forwardly excited. So I think even growing up as a teen, some of it was a fake it till I wasn't excited anymore a little bit. And then it became so normal that it really was just my life. Like it was just like, oh, I've done them. You mentioned Snoop Dogg earlier. I did a music video with Snoop, and I know all of his kids, and like nothing about it became out of the norm because I was a part of that community. Even though I was not the known face that the public knew, these are all people that know me.
Right. Well, there's that idea of like act like you've been there before. So like for example, like if you win a game in sports and like you celebrate too much. It's like, well, have you never won before? And so I think that like the same thing goes in that industry where it's like you have to kind of act like you've been there before, even if you haven't. And like I definitely had that transition, like you just described, of like that period where it's like you pretend that you're not excited. Like first, all you're excited to meet whoever it is. Then like eventually you start to pretend that you're not excited, and eventually you actually aren't excited because you met them a million times. Like it's normal to you.
Yeah, it takes out it sometimes takes out the fun. Like I had a good friend and I went to the studio one day and we were in the studio with Usher, Chris Brown, Bow Wow, a few others, and one of my good friends, Brian Michael Cox. And so I'm, bringing friends, a few friends over, and we're literally just listening to music and stuff. And I had one friend, and she was really, truly excited to meet Usher. And I think the other friends were kind of trying to, maybe around people like that more often, or trying to like kind of calm her down. And she and I talked. She's like, when am I going to get to meet Usher again? Like, and the reality of it is like, this isn't the world. Like, she isn't that deeply immersed in this that like, she's right. Like, we're not excited because it's some regular stuff, but it's like, yo, this is somebody's soundtrack. They were the soundtrack to my childhood. And I want to express to them that I'm happy to be here and I'm happy to get to be around them and, all of that. So that was such a cool moment. It was kind of like a kid on Christmas a little bit. And it's the fun pieces of entertainment that eventually it is like, this is work or this is, it's just being around friends. But it is like, oh, this is not shit that everybody gets to do every day. Like this is still really cool.
Yeah,
It's
so I
still
actually
really cool.
I enjoy. That's one thing I enjoy is like one thing I would enjoy is like bringing people who aren't like in that world like into that world because like you're over it and you get to kind of experience it through their eyes. Like you
Yes.
know, it kind of reminds you like, oh yeah, this is not normal, right? I remember one time speaking of Usher, like um I super randomly watched the Mayweather McGregor fight at LA Reid's house, and like I didn't have like I have a rule, not a rule, but like any kind of big party night in LA, it's so easy for people to kind of everyone it becomes like an arms race, like who's doing the coolest thing, and so I just don't like to if it's 4th of July, New Year's, Halloween, Labor Day, Memorial Day, I'm like if unless something's like super solidified, I'm not gonna like force it. And so, but I got invited to like watch the fight at Ellie Reid's house, and it was like this like I walk in, it's like Scottie Pippen, Usher, Kanye, Kim, and Courtney, I think, and like and I was like, this is, but like, at that point, I knew how to like, okay, like you can't like be a fan, you're like, hey, what's up? Hey, Kim's like, hi, I'm Kim. I'm like, oh, hi, what's up, Dom? But like you can't you can't like react. And also by that point, you're kind of like a little bit used to it. But I think that, bringing people around, it's kind of fun to see it through their eyes. But I think this is also just important because I think for people who, like I said, I think that there's going to be somebody out there who's like, well, like what Mara does is cool. I want to do that. And one thing, if you like are too much of a fan, it can mess up opportunities for you, right? Like if you, like if you meet somebody like, who you want to,
they feel like you don't, they
with.
feel like you don't belong there. There's a line, Ava DuVernay said it in an interview, and she said there's an era of desperation that some people have. And unfortunately, I don't want that. Like, that's not conducive for a working environment, frankly. And I understand, you are looking at it one way, but you do have to, you do have to keep a level of composure, a level head to even get to be in these spaces.
Yeah, they can't trust you, right? Because like if you're gonna do that, like, are you gonna leak a picture? Are you gonna like sneak a picture and like, are you gonna be like paparazzi? Like, you can't. So I think that as much as this is just like, oh, like, I feel like sometimes almost like we're humble bragging, like, oh, we hang out with all these people. But I think that for somebody who is outside this world and who hopes to like, work in entertainment, I think that like composing yourself and just acting like you've been there before, because like once this is not always right, but like often once you ask for that picture, like do that really thirsty thing, like they just don't see you the same anymore, right? Like they're not like,
well, they don't
you
see
might
you as
get
a
that.
peer. They
Yeah,
don't see you as a peer. Like you're not a part of the community. And it's interesting because like I really don't have pictures with anyone. Actually, honestly, the only person I probably have pictures with, either they're people who are my actually really close friends, or people I've grown up with, like a Kiki, or worked eventually with Yara. So it's like we're literally on set and somebody's taking these photos. But like I really have no memories or no captured memories of so many things. Like people would have no clue the kind of places I end up with, the kind of place I end up, the people I end up around. And it is something like you don't get to, if you want to do it more than once, you really don't get to share it. Like it is, if you know you're never going to experience it again, cool. And I think that's fine. But if this is something that you want to be in, you have to start seeing yourself as a part of it.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. I remember like I was like so when like I said, when I first moved that first year and probably like a year or two, like I took pictures with everybody. Like there's, if you go on my, like I archived a bunch of them because there's like cringe, but like if you go on my Instagram, especially back then, it's like me and
No,
Era. It's like
Dom
wait,
knows people. Dom know the people for real.
yeah, but at
Like,
some point it's like no, but at some point it's like wait, like what do you like? I don't have to take a picture every time I like I'm with Drake, right? Like who am I trying to prove? Like who am I trying to like? What am I trying to prove and who am I trying to prove it to, right? So I think I think
especially
that's
when you're
definitely
there, especially when it's like, this is something I do or I've done regularly. It's like, I'm here. I'm here. Like, like that's
yeah,
it.
yeah, exactly. And then just, okay, I guess transitioning. So like you know you had that experience. Also, really quick detour. When I was kind of going over your bio, I was like, wait, do you just only work with people whose names rhyme with your name? You know, Mara and Mara,
You
and obviously
know,
Mara and
I don't know if
Yara.
that's the Virgo in me, and I don't know the self-absorbed nature. I also have a little Leo in my chart, potentially. No, honestly, it just that happened crazily, and I don't know. I feel like I don't have anybody else's name to rhyme with in the industry, so now I got to do it on my own. I came up under some of the best, and now it's time to do it on my own.
Yeah, it's coming up under somebody is something that you know. I think like I feel like I came up under Kenya, right? Like he hired me for Blackish, and I think like coming up under somebody, it's always like you know, it's such a blessing, right? Because these are people who people would kill to work for, but then sometimes you're like, oh,
Absolutely.
like you just like you see where they're at and all the things they can do, and you want more, right?
Oh
But yeah,
yes, yes you do. It's
yeah,
it's a double, and you want it. You when you're a part of someone's journey, especially when you are I can't say discovered young, but for lack of better words, discovered young in this business, you get to be around people whose journey you didn't really get to see firsthand. And so sometimes you're around them and you're around the money and you're around the fame, you're around the opportunity, you're around the ability to get green light projects in a way that like you have to put in the work to get to that space. And just because you're associated with them um, does not mean you have any less work to do than they
yeah,
may have done to get there. And that's always, I think, sometimes a big misunderstanding. I'm like, people I'm with, they've been doing this for a very long time. And even now working on my own things, it's sometimes very difficult that I'm like, I'm used to getting to work with big budgets because Yara had a big budget. And he's like, I'm not Yara. I worked and I got to support that and facilitate that. And now I have to work long enough and earn my stripes and make my name large enough that I can demand those kind of budgets.
well, and you're also not entitled to their help. I think there were times I had to like kind of like there've been times I had to like I kind of check myself where I'm like, whoa, like you know, maybe if I'm in between, you know, shows or I'm in between something and I'm like, man, like this person who like is up here, like why haven't you know why aren't they like kind of
We've
throwing me
talked about this
something?
a lot.
Yeah, but well not that much. Maybe, but I think
No,
it's like
it's a conversation you and I have had. As I'm saying, like, yes, it's something that has come
uh,
up because I think people
no,
that.
no, I know. I'm being a little bit facetious, but I think that you have to remember that, like, I remind myself that, like, people have like kids, they have like family, they have like people who they've known for way longer than they've known you, right? And I think it's like you're also you have to like go out and get your own, right? You have to go out and do it on your own sometimes,
Right.
but also like you know, they've also given you kind of a platform, or like put you in a position already. But yeah, I think you know it's like having like a mentor is like who's in that kind of position is like huge and shouldn't be understated. But I think there can be frustration sometimes when it's like, oh, like you could be doing more, but it's like they have like an entire like there's probably their phones are ringing off the hook, right? Like, and you're not like
Yeah.
like you're not the only person they know. Um, but yeah, I think so. You went back to college. You went to Spelman, which low key I want to long term turn this into a dating podcast because you know I just like dating is an evergreen topic, and I've heard about Spelman. Like it's just that like I think it was No, it was Howard actually. I think it was Howard, but I think it applies to Spelman where like just the like the woman just far. I don't think it's any like HBCU. Like the
It's
woman just.
actually it's society.
Yeah, that's true. Well, yeah, that's we'll get to that. But
It's
like
society. It's
yeah, the eligible women just far outnumber the eligible men. So like what happens, the men just end up being kind of dogs. Or just not dogs might be a harsh. I don't want to hate. But it ends up being, you know,
all
taking
over,
advantage of
a
that
little
situation.
over.
Well,
Yeah,
yeah, I'd love to
7
hear about. We could get to that later. So you did. So you were at Spelman. You did this degree, but you would you go back to LA during the summers? Like how are you doing this dual track like college, but also like you're pursuing this other situation?
So it was a really interesting time. This is 2012, and Spelman, thankfully, is in Atlanta. And even still to this day, entertainment, it was actually, it's also kind of a part of why I chose Atlanta because I knew that I didn't necessarily have to leave entertainment per se. Music was there, production was kind of picking up there. And so because I knew people in the industry, people knew me, I actually came out of school. I came to school and I immediately got a commercial agent in Atlanta. Funny enough, I actually quickly left the agency. Like I actually was like, you know what? I I had a lot of people who had to remind me that the entertainment industry is not going to go anywhere. And I've already been homeschooled and like I don't have but a few years to be here and to try to enjoy my college experience. And so I decided not to pursue acting, but I did still explore a lot of different things in the entertainment industry. Even starting at school, I was like, okay, well, I know I love entertainment. I knew I liked to write, and I even before going to college, I ran a lifestyle blog called Lips Unsealed. I had a YouTube page that I was working on with Kofi Serbo called Black Sheep TV. I was a creative director and producer there, and it was interesting because like I was credited these things, but like I didn't really know what these titles were. And I was doing them, but it was just like we're just making stuff happen. It's some teams making things happen. So, I ended up people knew me from the industry. So opportunities would just come like, hey, do you want to? Somebody asked me would I help do a screening for some short film. I organized the screening. The screening ended up being for Akon's DJ. Akon was there, like, who put this together? Like, and I was like, me. He's like, oh, okay. Like, what do you do? I'm like, I'm in college, but like, my background is kind of in this. That turned into a job. Um,
You
because I
never
was in
know you
entertainment.
never know who's watching. Just that's
You
one of those
never
things where
know. Was doing just really any and everything. I had a cousin who went to Spelman who is a producer. And I say cousin, also black cousin, like not family, but close family. And I didn't even know she was a producer, but she knew that I had aspirations of the entertainment industry. And so she connected me with a friend of hers who was producing a web series for BET called What's at Stake. I became kind of a host. It was like a digital series that was like talking about issues that were at stake in our community. And then now, after I went to being a host, they had me come to BET out there. I also then got to produce one of the episodes, which led to me like, okay, this is what producing is like. And I'm working on the shoot schedule and getting the talent together and working with the crew. And that opportunity led me to meeting somebody else that led me to an event that led me to an internship at BET. So it just, because I had a little bit of entertainment acumen, as you will, if you will, I think a lot of things kind of, people would just give me opportunities or know somebody who needed somebody who was young, who they probably didn't have to pay that much. I was still a full time student. Um, and so that kind of just kept me in the game, really. But I, I wasn't really planning on doing that when I went to college. Like I was like, I was going to have a good 4 years and then I was going to move right back to LA and get back to acting. And through all of those experiences, I did an advertising boot club and won a competition with Beats by Dre. Like it was just so many things. I was like, oh my God, there's so much more to this business than I even knew. And I like some of these other things and I'm good at some of these other things. And what it did, acting is a profession that if you're just solely just an actor, you only work when you book. That's when you work. And there's so many other roles that allow you a little more agency. creativity, and that you can just, like I said, you can have you can have agency. You still have to get some yeses, but you can get the ball moving on your own. You can start putting things together. You can do things for yourself. That some actors, you can see them now. They're writing and they're directing, but those are other jobs. But like if they're just an actor, you're just waiting for a yes.
Yeah,
Because a
I was
lot,
listening to I was listening to an interview, like an old interview by a rapper turned actor, and no, an actor turned rapper, and he said that the reason for that switch is because as an actor, you have to the very things that you're saying, right? You have to wait for somebody to write a script. You have to audition. You have to get, your agent has to kind of get you the audition. You have to, do the chemistry read and all these things. You have to wait for, a director to get picked, and then you shoot it, and then like many, many months later, or even years, someone edits it and it gets put out. Versus he said
right?
rapping, like he has a beat, he can hop in the studio right now, and
You don't even have to go to a studio. People have those in their house.
exactly,
Like you can do that on your own.
yeah. And so that's one thing I do love about writing. I mean, that wasn't really why I kind of ended up choosing it. I wrote for this humor magazine in college, and I was just always interested in yeah, I guess I always like comedy. But yeah, like it's something that you can, like, you don't have to, like, you can write a bomb script, right? Or you can, you can start producing something. Like you don't have to, like, you're right, like you have more agency. Um
Right.
that's very, very true. And so and that's also a very mature view to feel like, hey, you know what, this stuff isn't going anywhere. Because I think that's one thing that people psychologically have a hard time doing is like everything has to happen right now, right? It's very
It
mature to
wasn't
realize, hey,
even
it's not going anywhere.
it wasn't even not going anywhere. It was, to be very honest, by the time I came out of college, it was a matter of lifestyle for me. Do I want, I can act. I know that about myself. And I know that if given the opportunity, I can take it. But again, like I wanted to be more in control of my life. And I wanted to make, frankly, quicker money. Like I could go to a production company, I could go work behind somebody. Like it still takes a minute in this field to just kind of earn a decent income, but it could be way quicker than acting. Now, granted, somebody could literally come onto the scene and end up on a hit show in a day, and that happens. That does happen. It is more
It does,
of
but it
lightning in
does.
a bottle,
It
but
does.
but it is rare. It is very rare.
Well, that's an important thing to say because I think people, people listening, you say like, "Hey, like I will, I didn't want to act, 'cause I wanted faster, more money." I think people would be confused, but I think that's so true because if you think about like one thing that people joke about is that in LA, like you'll always see someone you used to date like on a billboard, but like that, like an overnight success takes like 5 years, right? Like I think that even like when I
10,
left,
10,
yeah,
5 is really 10.
10.
5 is slim.
Like I think like Brad Pitt was like sleeping on. He was like a pool boy basically. Like he was, for years. And like I think John Hamm was basically like, he was like sleeping on somebody's couch, right? Like
Michael
everyone.
B. Jordan went to go get a job at Jack in the Box after The Wire ended. He went from being on a show to he could not work, and he was not like then people weren't even hiring him because like they were like, you've been on a TV show, you don't even you don't have experience doing anything else. Like it's it is not it's not the most transferable job. And frankly, depending on when you started this profession or just your background, some people may come from spaces where they don't have any formal education. And this is the space they've kind of been in. And we do know, obviously, now, even more so than it was 10 years ago, where you can, you can be trading or you can make content online. 10 years ago, you still kind of needed a college degree.
Yeah, I mean,
So
we
it's a
all
lot of
now
people
have
who are
this.
like, I
Yeah,
didn't do anything. I don't know what the fuck I was gonna do.
yeah, we all now have this, basically production studio in our pockets. It's like an iPhone, but back then, yeah, it wasn't. And even now, like obviously, because the part of the other one of the other results of us all having this production studio in our pockets, it's an iPhone, is that anyone can kind of. It's a lot more competition to be kind of a self-styled independent creator. So yeah, I think that that's very interesting. I think that that's so true. Like an overnight success. Like even when I think about like when I left. I was working on Wall Street and I started writing for Blackish like 2 weeks later. And I think everyone was like, whoa, like, wait, what? Like, people who didn't really know me, but it was like, well, it's like, oh, that's like an overnight thing. But if I think about it, I actually got on the Harvard Lampoon, which is like this humor magazine in like '09. And so like the start of that journey, that was like a 6-year journey, from that was '09 to 2015 when I got on Blackish. And then even if I think about like, growing up and like being into like, like I remember when I would be in a writer in meetings for shows, they'll be like, oh, like, basically tell us your story, right? And like you'd be like, how did you start kind of getting into comedy? I used to always start it kind of, I would often start it like around college, like, oh, I joined this humor magazine. But then I was like, wait a second, like growing up, I watched like a ton of, I mean, obviously everyone watches cartoons, but like I watched a ton of like, I would watch the like Jon Stewart and like Colbert and like
Yeah.
Conan O'Brien and like I would watch Comedy Central a ton. And so I was like, wait, I've probably always had that. And then, it's funny because when you said about, I think the one thing that actors always do is they say, well, I've been performing my whole life. And everyone's like, well, I mean, we all have, right? Like everyone's grandma brings them out during Thanksgiving and says, hey, like do your dance for everybody. Or like, but like, there is a level of like, if you kind of start peeling back the layers, you're like, wait, like this thing that I'm doing, it's always kind of been there in some form.
Yeah,
You
no,
know,
absolutely. I think a lot of who we end up becoming, um, we always showed signs of it very early in some regard. Like you may not have, it may not have been fostered in the way that some people are fortunate to have, but there's usually a seed. And even for me, I think I was able to kind of transfer over because I had a lot of, I was doing a lot. Like I look back and I'm like, oh, like when I was running my own blog, I was creating content. I was writing. I was booking talent for interviews. Like, and then that led me to doing the thing with Kofi. And it's crazy looking at our team now. It's Kofi. It's an incredible DP, David Sutherland, who's worked with Steven Spielberg, DJ Atron, who is a huge DJ here in LA. Like our team, we kind of all were just doing things young, and like now watching it all as adults, I'm like, kind of been doing this stuff. Like we just like there were seeds planted for so long, and sometimes a lot of our like unique personalities. Like I'm an organizer through and through, and I love acting, but truly, like I love planning. I like control, and that is literally what a producer does. Like you shepherd a project and you create the systems. Like, but everyone's like, what does a producer do? I'm like, we make things happen. And like we sit between the creative process, we separate between the operational process, we orchestrate ideas, we tell people what to do, we get to hire people. And I'm like, I've been bossing people around my whole life.
well, you have a younger. Are you the oldest?
No, in the middle, but I'm the oldest in my home. My older sister, we have a different mother. And so she was not in the home growing up. So I was the oldest in my home.
So you were bossing people around back then.
I was doing that in school on class projects. I've been taking the lead for things for a long time.
Yeah, so yeah, there's always a seed there. I mean, it's also funny that we have all these like connections. So like obviously like Yara, like me and Yara got really tight on Blackish, and then you ended up working with Yara. And then Kofi and I, like Kofi was one of the first people I met because he was dating like a friend of mine, and he ended up like I had this brilliant like so when I was living in New York downtown, like close to the like World Trade Center or the financial district. When I moved to LA, I'm like I'm not gonna pay like New York and like LA rent. Like I got this apartment. I was looking, whatever in LA, and so I thought my genius idea was to like, okay, so I was Airbnb my room in New York, and it was getting so much money that I was like, oh, I'll get a 2 bedroom in LA, and I'll Airbnb the second room, and it'll pay for itself. And lo and behold, like it's like, wait a second, like when you're like a young man who like has their own place, like you don't want random people in and out, like for obvious reasons. And so Kofi ended up moving in. So like Kofi was like my first like LA roommate. And it's like obviously his trajectory's been insane. But yeah, I think that's one cool thing. And like two things I want to do about with this pod. One, I think like show people like that there are like people stories like yours, and like how to kind of, progress through, entertainment, all these different industries. And also show them people that there are lots of different paths, not just acting. But I guess the other thing too is that like God, okay, it's like escaping me now. Um, oh yeah, that like I want to like talk to people like at like different points in their career, right? Like I think that like people often like do the retrospective, like an interview with Issa Rae now is like, hey, like I made it, I'm Issa Rae, but like imagine interviewing Issa Rae when she was like doing awkward black girl, right? When it's like, hey, so
Right.
you're like, wait, YouTube is a site to like share funny videos, like you're doing like narrative storytelling on YouTube, and then like maybe like a couple years, like I think that like there are all the people we know who have like you said, like the people who were with Kofi back then on that team, like everyone's kind of spreads out, especially like in Black Hollywood over the past 10 years. Like when I moved, I remember it was like like Straight Outta Compton was happening, and like obviously Blackish was in season 2, and like it was like this kind of inflection point for like Black Hollywood, and where everyone's kind of like spread out, and is like, you'll like watch Instagram like, oh, that's Malcolm Kelly, right? He was Lil Saint, and like You Got Served. Like
Yeah.
everyone's kind of like growing, and like obviously Kofi, like everyone's like kind of spread out and like is doing amazing things in all these different areas. And it's like I want to be able to tell those stories like as they're happening, not look back like 10 years later and be like, oh, like tell it like like have another conversation 6 months from now and be like, oh, like what are you doing now? But yeah, that's amazing. So okay, back to you left Spelman, you finished, and you came right back to LA.
No, so by the time I actually had finished college, I was really kind of like I'm more interested in producing at that time, and I was also in a relationship. And I graduated a bit early, and I actually started my own production company. So I was actually creating content for businesses throughout Atlanta, writing treatments, directing, like commercials, things like that. So I was doing that, and at the same time, somebody approached me. Her name is Janae Bolden. She approached me about auditioning for Bossip to do a daily, like YouTube pop culture news update. And it's so interesting because I always get these opportunities and people kind of are attracted to me based on my personality, but don't know that like I do this. Like on camera work is something I'm trained in. So I was like, yeah, I can do this. And it's always like people are kind of bringing things that they just don't know that this is my world. I've had commercial directors reach out and I'm like, yeah, I am a commercial actress. I not only, I guess, have the look, but maybe what you're seeing or feeling is some of that experience. And so I ended up not only working, having my own production company, but also doing this daily YouTube project with Gossip. And that actually like paid my bills. Like, I mean, the production took a minute to take off, but that was pretty lucrative for me. And that transitioned actually into a show on WeTV. So this is like 2015. I did that for about a year and a half. And then we got greenlit to do a show called Bossip on WeTV. So it went from me to then I had a co-host doing the YouTube thing. And then we actually had a show on air around that we shot in 2017. So I did that. I did season 1, and at the end of season 1, I actually went to Essence Festival, and I was there kind of as an
Was it a
influencer
girls
for
trip?
eight.
Was it a girls
No,
trip?
I went by myself. So I went because this was ahead of the show premiering, and a friend was working with AT&T and asked me because I kind of had the show coming on, things like that, would I want to go on behalf of AT&T as like an influencer and talk about my experience like as a lead up to the premiere of the show. While there, I bumped into Mara Brock Akil, who I had actually already met when I was in college. And she asked what I was up to. I told her at this show coming out, XYZ. And she's like, oh, I'm looking for an apprentice. Like, I want to kind of rear the next Mara Brock Akil. Like, is that something you're interested in? I'm like, I'm interested, but I'm under contract. So, like, can't really do anything about that. That was like in July. I was still under contract for a couple more months for my season. I was like, so I can't really do anything. And I went, while at Essence, I actually met Yara as well, same Essence Festival. But I went back to Atlanta. I talked to one of my former professors from Spelman, and shout out to Keith Bolden. He encouraged me to like put my name up for the Mara position, although she was looking to hire really fast. He's like, you just never know. So I ended up doing that. That was like the top, maybe late June, top first week of July. I ended up getting the role like the day my contract ended.
Oh wow,
Like it
that's a
was
blessing.
crazy. I think I got my role maybe a little bit, like my birthday was August 28th. I bought a new car. I'd actually renewed my lease. I got the call from Mara like September 1st, and then I had to be in LA by September 13th.
Oh
And
wow.
so that happened. Like that's actually what brought me back to LA. And I always said, like, I knew I wanted to get back, but when I first went to college, I was like, I'm going back. And then based on how I told you, like quality of life, money, I was doing great in Atlanta. I had a great place. I had a luxury car. Like I was doing well, and and I was not going back to LA with no job. Like I was not about to come to LA and be like a
Period.
struggling,
Period.
just like. And funny enough, I still was very much struggling. But I at least knew I had a check coming in, and I knew that I could support my livelihood. And I still actually did freelance jobs and things like that, but like that was what brought me back. And then I was with Mara throughout majority of the duration of Love Is. I was not there that long, a little over probably like half a year. Unfortunately, the show was canceled, and then she dissolved that
It was
company
a
and started a
comedy,
new
right?
production company.
It was a scripted
It's a
comedy, right? Or dramedy?
scripted, yeah, scripted dramedy, romantic comedy,
It was on
based
Wii,
on
or where
Mara.
was it?
It was on OWN. It was
Oh,
on
yeah, yeah, yeah,
OWN,
yeah.
based on Mara and Salim Akil's love story. Really
And this was like
amazing show.
2014?
No, this is 2017.
Wait, 2015?
17.
Oh, 7. Oh, okay.
So it's
So I
5 years
I
ago,
yeah, I
about to
vaguely
be
remember that
6.
show.
And I think that's when we met, when I was there with Mara. And right after that, I ended up, I was actually let go, funny enough. I'm not going to hold anyone. I not only was I an apprentice, I was a all around assistant. I assisted in the writer's room. I assisted with everything across departments, but I also assisted Mara very personally. So I was assisting with children. I was assisting like every part of her life. And she was like, "You are not a good assistant. Like, you are extremely creative and very talented in a lot of things. But, like, you are not good at this." And that was correct. I was not. And so she let me go right before the show kind of was canceled. I think I stopped there in April. I think the show is canceled around May or June. And then I took a few months. I actually ended up, funny enough, didn't want to move here with no job. I was unemployed, and my mom encouraged me to apply for unemployment just to like figure out what I wanted to do, take a beat. And it was actually a godsend because unemployment, they look at your past year income to determine how much you're going to get on unemployment. Well, I was making quite a bit on Bossip. And so that was still within that same year. And so I actually was making more on unemployment than I was making as an apprentice. So I was comfortable for many, many months. I took like 6 months off and I was just chilling and figuring out like, what do I want to do next?
Oh man,
And
Republicans are gonna hear this and be like, "We got to cancel unemployment."
yeah, I mean, I had to apply for jobs. Like, you have to be on unemployment, you have to actually like interview and stuff. I just wasn't getting anything. So, I was absolutely wanting to have a job. Like, I didn't want to be unemployed at all. And here's the thing, you only get half of what you make. So, like, I was doing well, but I was not doing like, I still had a
Yeah.
roommate. I had already downsized my luxury car. It was an interesting experience. But I ended up running into Yara and Carrie Shahidi at a Black show same year, and they asked me what I was up to. I told them that I was trying to figure out what my next move was, and from there, we ended up just kind of building a rapport. We took a meeting, we took like a dinner meeting, and they asked me like about my ideas that I had, and we found a lot of synergy. And I started consulting for them, and I consulted for about 2 years. And then right before the pandemic, they asked me would I come on to their production company as an executive, and they gave me the title of director of creative media, which for some people is like a creative director. She technically, and for actors, a lot of the creative directors are more of their stylists who build like the actual image of the person. I work on building the creative direction of the brand and like what those content pieces look like and those pillars for the brand.
Yeah, that's
So that's
dope.
how I ended up back in LA.
Yeah, that's amazing. Lots of things to unpack. One, when you said that when people are like, "Oh, like wow, like you do this," I've definitely had that experience. So since like I've done a couple of things where I've done with like written content, whether it's like tech or like NFT, like stuff like where I've written content. I remember someone was like, "Oh, like wow, this is really funny." I'm like writing copy, or just writing stuff for the website, or just you know brands and stuff. I was like, yeah, I am funny. Like maybe like I not like I wrote for The Simpsons, man. Like I like I can write
I
like
do this.
oh
I
yeah,
do
like yeah,
this.
like I can be funny on paper. And then what else? I mean, I think that there's so much to like first of all, like just the godsend. I remember like it's weird how the Shahidis have like intersected both of our lives in like these weird
Yeah.
like almost like divine ways. So like Yara like I met Yara and Carrie for the first time twice, basically, because I don't know if I told you the story, but my first year working in New York after college, like I worked on Wall Street, and Nas was coming to Harvard and he was gonna the Harvard Lampoon, which is the magazine that I wrote for, was gonna like host him for a little bit as part while he was there. And I was like, oh, like I was like, I'm going to see Nas. Like I was working, I had like a, that one of those Wall Street kind of 80-hour a week investment banking jobs. But the secret about those jobs, like everyone's like, you're working 80 hours a week. You are, but it's more like you're on. It's more like you're just on call. Like you're always kind of like you're expected to be available for 24/7 basically. And so I just like got on the bus, like the Bolt bus or whatever the bus is. And I was like, yeah, I'm going to Boston, and like hopefully my BlackBerry just doesn't, I was kind of in this weird lull where I wasn't staffed on anything crazy. And I went down there, and so Nas was there, and like there's like this little girl and like her and like this other woman, and I spent most of the other people, undergrads were talking to Nas, and like I talked to him a little bit, but like I just me and this woman just started talking, and then they wanted to kind of smoke. I mean, it's no secret that Nas smokes weed, so I don't know why I'm being weird about this, but they wanted to smoke. I don't smoke, and like so Carrie and the woman and the little girl were like, all right, like this is our cue to kind of leave. And like years later, we were one of the first Blackish table reads, and I've been seeing Carrie around. I was like, yo, like you just look mad familiar. Like and she's like, I was like, wait, were you at, like, we just realized, wait, we'd met before. Cause at that time. And like, it was just so funny. And then obviously since then they just treated me, like family. And even like I had a thing that I was writing, I was up for this pilot at TBS, and they were like, oh, we'll tell, like it was under Mass Appeal. And Carrie was like, oh, we'll tell Nas to put in a word for you. And like the guy I was meeting with was like, oh yeah, like, yeah, Nas put in a good word for you. I'm like, and it's one of those moments when we go back to talking about earlier where it's like I grew up, like I remember even like college, like I caught on to Illmatic late. Like when I was in college, like, oh, I realized why everyone says it's like the greatest rap album of all time. This is amazing. And to be in a position like however many years later where Nas is like saying, yo, this is my guy, look out for him. I ended up getting that job. It was a TV show based on Biggie Small's childhood. But yeah, like it's so, it's like these, it's just, kind of crazy. Just the whole industry and just all these kind of these interconnections. But yeah, so then you worked with them for years, and then after I guess you left semi recently, right? Now you're tell us what you're doing now.
Yeah. Well, I would say left. We just transitioned the relationship. So I went from being a consultant to being full time to now I still consult. And I kind of work with them on a project basis. So that's amazing. But it definitely opened me up to be able to do other things. Like when I've really been exclusively with Yara for about 4 years, which has been a dream. Like, I mean, I've gotten to see the world. They took me to Europe for actually my first, second, third, probably fourth time. Like I traveled the world with them. I've made amazing content. We've done the Met and Chanel shows and just so many incredible
Wait,
things,
did you
season
get to
after
go? Did you get
season.
to go to the Met? Or
No, what did Drake say? You know they only give you 2 tickets to
yeah,
the
I was about to
Met,
go.
but
Yeah,
no,
that's
but
what I
I
was
did get to.
thinking. I was like, whoa,
No, I
like,
got
cause
to produce. I got to produce and direct her Get Ready for Vogue and Dior.
wow, yeah, that's
So,
amazing. That's
and
amazing.
I got to drop her off at the Met. So I did get to see her getting onto the carpet and things like that, but no, I didn't get to attend the Met. But I cool proximity to everything. And so, yeah, I transitioned back into, kind of doing my own thing in end of January. Since then I have created, produced and directed about 20 hours of education content for the company Skillshare. I am leading social for a project Yara currently has called Yara Shahidi's Day Off, which
I've been
is
seeing
again, like
that.
I
It's
said,
so great.
yeah,
I've been
again, like I mentioned that I still am working with Yara, so that's always family. It's always a great time to be able to come back and work with them. So I'm working on that. I am gearing up to do some branded content with. I can't speak too much on it, but a really, really big retailer, and I'll be producing and directing about 10 pieces of content for them for the holidays. And then I also, at the top of the year, restructured my own production company. So I'm working with you and a handful of really talented writers on a couple projects, trying to get a couple pilots to a good place so we can start taking those out. I also finished my pilot. I recently started doing stand-up comedy. I am in production of my own podcast. So it's so crazy to go from a period where a lot of my life, or at least in the past several years, have been dedicated to serving and building a brand and assisting, the likes of an incredible producer. And I learned so much, and it's time right now to just apply it for myself and apply it for the slate of things that I have lined up and my own things that speak to me, and figure out what stories I want to tell, get back in front of the camera, as it is still something I love to do. And now I know every angle. I've done marketing, I've seen production from pre all the way to post. I have been in front of the camera. And so as I'm building my company, I won't always wear all these hats, but I at least know what everyone does wearing the hats. And that's really important to be a leader. There is an empathy that comes with understanding what an existence responsibility is. And I've been that. There is, I understand what people are depending on a producer to do. I understand being on the side and seeing what it's like receiving notes on your own project that's like, this is my baby, and somebody is tearing it up. And so I feel like everything I've done over the last decade has led to this moment of like, it's go time for everything that you kind of want to do for yourself. Yara has always so eloquently put that I help her make her dreams come true. And that is one of that is one of the kindest things someone can say. And that's literally what I've done for many people. And so now I am working to make my dreams come true.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I like it's like bringing other people's projects and like ideas to life. It's like, wait, like let me bring my own to life. And I think that's one thing like I think the gift and the curse, or a gift and a curse for me, of kind of getting into writing and all that stuff so sudden. Like even like that story you were telling about, hey, getting the Mara opportunity, and it's like it's September 1st. And it's like you start September 13th. That's kind of how Blackish happened. Like and even The Simpsons, like Blackish, I was in LA for a friend's our friend Naja, a friend's birthday, who and
Mm-hmm.
I had an agent. I told my agent, I'm like, hey, I'm in town for like a week or so. Just set up some meetings if you can. And he had set me up on a meeting with Kenya, me and Jonathan Groff, who was the not the Glee Jonathan Groff, but Jonathan Groff, who's also the showrunner of Blackish, and I think he's the showrunner of maybe Mo now or something like that. I have to check,
I
but
love Mom.
yeah, we just hit it off, right? And they're like, oh, he wants to hire you, and then even the Simpsons was even more random because like I was kind of like going to the airport for the holidays, and my agent was like, hey, my agent was like, hey, like they want you to oh, he's the producer of This Fool. I guess that's something different. Jonathan Groff is, but yeah,
Oh yeah, the Hulu show.
yeah, what's it, This Fool? It's like I think it's like a hood type of story.
Mexican comedy, I think.
Yeah. So like my agent was just like, "Oh, hey, the Simpsons wants to, like you have to come back soon because the Simpsons wants to hire you." And then most TV shows there's like a meeting where you kind of like they feel you out sort of and just make sure because they've read you on the page, they know they like you. But a writer's room is like a submarine, like one kind of it's like one poison this person can kind of like run the whole thing, and so they kind of make sure that you're okay. And then but the Simpsons I just started like there was no like hey there's a meeting. First of all I hate that we call them meetings because like in any other industry they would be called interviews like they're interviewing you, but we just
Yeah.
like a meeting. I mean okay there are like meetings like Kenya and Anthony Anderson like just went on a meeting and like that's how Blackish was kind of that's one of the early days of Blackish because they had the same manager and they're like hey you two should meet, so that's like that is a real meeting, but a lot of the stuff that we call meetings in quote unquote the industry are really more like interviews. But yeah, these things can just happen like all of a sudden out of nowhere and happen very quickly. But it's like at some point, like once you've done it for others, it's like wait, I can kind of do this for myself. Like I've seen people build.
Yeah.
A friend of mine started Twitch streaming, and I need to get him on the pod. Twitch streaming in like 2018. Like now he's like one of the biggest Twitch streamers in the world. Makes like $6 million a year. And so I think like
Wow.
yeah, I mean he's like a huge outlier. But I think like doing like that's one thing about LA. You really see people like the person who like today like owes you rent money like in 4 years might be like a star of a Netflix. Like literally like might be on the side of a bus, right? And so it just shows like, hey, if you have a vision, you just really commit to it over a period of years. Um, it can really become huge. I think sometimes I like because I've had like I said those random like, hey, this hit TV show wants to hire you. You can start tomorrow. I forget like when you're doing your own thing, it's much more of a slog, right? Like you're like building it brick by brick. But okay, so that's where you are now. As we start to wrap up, I was only half kidding that this is gonna eventually be a dating show. So I feel like Issa Rae insecure is about like I feel like two things. One, I feel like I don't know if it's the pandemic, but I feel like millennials, like people who are in that like '90s babies, like or like 90, like basically not Generation Z, but like '90s and late '80s, all like decided to just start getting booed up and didn't tell anybody. Like I feel like all the
I
people
don't
who
feel
I've
like
seen.
anybody started not telling people. I think that because we're in such a surveillance culture and because we are in this sharing culture, people feel like no one's telling people. It's like, we don't know these people. I know that everybody in their real life knows that they're dating someone. And obviously, as we saw from Issa's wedding, plenty of people were at her wedding. So they clearly knew she was engaged and all these things. I think it's like because so much of the culture is now sharing, 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 we find it weird when we don't know things.
But okay, so
Excuse me.
but that's not so. What I meant more so is that like I feel like people like my age, people like in that kind of millennials, basically like younger millennials. If you want us like flex, like let's say like 3 years ago, the flex, or maybe like 3-4 years ago, if you wanted to kind of flex, you would kind of post like standing on a table with bottles. You're kind of you got a lot of baddies around you, and I feel like literally overnight the flex became like matching pajamas. Here's me and Bay on vacation. Like maybe we might even have a
We're
kid in there.
grown. We've grown up.
But I
That's what
feel
happened. We grew up.
I agree, but I
We
feel like but I feel like it's the biggest dogs. Like I feel like some of the people like it's like, whoa, like you were a dog, like not even in a bad way, but like you were like the guy who was like you were the dude who had the party that like like whether it's like New York, it's like dude who had the party in the apartment in Harlem that everybody would go. So like you were like kind of like the dude who was out here in these streets, and it's like, well, like, you got like 2 kids, like you're making reels with your daughter, like and it's like, wait,
shout
like
out to Drea. You can erase your honus. You can
yes,
erase your
yeah.
honus, and
So
people are growing up, and I love to see it.
I love to see it, but I feel like nobody told me. Like my beef is that I feel like
You
nobody
missed
told me.
out.
Yeah, I just feel like, wait, like it's like everyone's like it's like imagine when you see your like back in the Snapchat days, I guess Instagram story too, but like those nights where like you'll see. I mean, it was this happened to me maybe more often than most people because like all my friends in LA were like kind of women because I was like I think you get friends mostly from like school, church, and work. And like I wasn't in school, obviously I was working. I unfortunately, sorry, mom and dad, I don't really attend church like that. And then my work, Blackish, like all the other writers were for the most part in there. It was a
Older.
yeah, it was a show about parenting. And so, and also like to be fair, like if you're like we're talking about these parties and stuff, like you can't show up to certain places with a whole bunch of dudes. So it's like when you see all your friends hanging out without you, it's like, well, like why did no one tell me that we were going to like such and such tonight? I feel like that's what happened with like dating. I feel like everyone like people were like just like, well, like you got matching pajamas, like so like that's the new
I'm
wave.
dying.
I feel like that's the new flex. Like the new like the flex used to like I feel like it happened on the drop of a dime. Where like the flex, like the same dudes who like yo, like I got my arm, like I'm at the club, I'm just out here, like I'm in these streets, like
I feel like it's an internal clock. Like I feel like internally, like something like there went one day that I cared about being in the club, and then it was like I don't have matching pajamas, but I do have a onesie I wear with myself, and like it was just like like yeah, like out of nowhere, I would be in the club and like I'm too old for this. Like why am
oh,
I here?
I mean, so
And
I
I
was
feel like
never.
maybe it hasn't happened to you yet. Maybe your
No, 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 no,
internal
no.
clock has not
Whoa,
kicked
whoa,
on.
whoa. Let's rewind. So I've never been a club person because in Houston people shoot at the club. So I've never been a club person, and I even like the club was loud. But like in LA, like I was obviously like I said when I first moved, I was sucked into that whole Hollywood like Hyde and Bootsy Bellows and Hooray Henry's and like like the scene. But like even that, like I don't love the club. It was just funny to me like where I would see people kind of just like it felt like like if you want to kind of show off and look cool and like if you wanted to stunt on people like 4 years ago, if you were like our age, it was like to show off like you got like you're really in these streets, like you got basically you have quote unquote hoes. Like having hoes was like the cool thing, and then like overnight it's like having a girlfriend
A
who you go on
wife.
trips with and like a child. And I just think it's
Yeah.
funny how quickly that happened. And then the other thing about dating, before you have to go out, is Is it that hard? Is it that bad? Like I feel like insecure. I feel like my experiences with Black women, especially like late 20s, early 30s, especially in LA, they talk about it like it's this horror story. It's just like I do not want to have to tell another nigga my favorite color. Like I'm sick of it. Like I just don't want to do it anymore. Like, is it that bad? Is it that hard as a successful Black woman?
Yeah, yeah. I think it's because I think so many of us desire equally yoked partnership. And as women become more successful, our pool of men decreases. For a lot of men, you may not actually care if they're equally yoked or not. Are they cute? Are they whatever? And so your pool, as you become more successful, just increases. Like the women are coming by the boatloads, and the even potential suitors, like it's really limiting. And in many ways, you're probably settling in some capacity, but I still think it can be fun. Like I won't go out and say like it's miserable. Like I still have a lot of hope. I still enjoy dating. More often than not, I do get fairly annoyed, and I'm like, this was a waste of my time. This is a waste. Like we are not on the same level at all.
Okay,
And God,
okay. Three. Sorry to cut you off because you have to go soon. I have three quick things. Where you like best place to meet somebody, like whether it's an online or in person, like app. Best date, worst date.
okay, quickly, let's see. Okay, best place to meet someone. I say at a mutual friends. I think that's the best way. It's the
Agree,
best
agree.
place. Although I've met some really interesting people online, but I know typically if I'm looking for equally yoked, I'll probably meet them amongst friends. Best date. I went viral for this. I went on this walking date during the pandemic, and it was no place to like go. So we grabbed some tea or coffee, and we just walked around Eagle Rock. And it wasn't even like an incredible date as much as like the conversation was just so good and stimulating. Worst dates. I had somebody bring me like literally rings on a first date, like boxes of rings.
Like diamond rings? Like what kind of rings?
No, not even. No, I wish. No,
Ring
like
pops?
little cheap gold rings. I think
Oh,
his sister had like an
that's great.
Instagram boutique, and
I've heard horror stories.
and wanted me to call his grandmother, like talk to his grandmother on FaceTime.
Oh, I thought you were about to say call his Uber because I've heard stories of like, oh, the guy asked me to call his Uber. Like, I've heard those type
Oh,
of
I
horror
mean,
stories.
I've asked people have asked me like I went to a date at Creation, and this guy asked me to go to get a smoothie, and I'm presuming like, okay, cool, like I'm good with a light lift date, like it's not gonna spend a lot, we're just gonna get to know each other, and we order, and we're standing at the front, and the woman's like, anything else, and he's like, no, and so after what felt like an hour. I finally pulled out my card to pay the $20, and
That's
he's like,
awkward.
"Oh,
Okay,
he's like, I can Zelle you." I was like,
okay. Well, if
"You
he's out you, I mean,
well, he didn't ever sell me, but also you waited 5 minutes. You clearly had no intentions of paying.
yeah, that's
So
awkward.
don't have
Okay,
intentions of paying now.
all right. Rapid fire before you quickly head out. Okay, so that. Oh yeah, quick thing. Yeah, the pandemic. I went on a hiking day during the pandemic, and it turned into like one of my like a very long and very serious relationship. So kudos to pandemic dating. Okay, and like moment where you've been like, yo, pinch me, like I can't believe I'm really in this room, like where you're like, that moment, and then moment where you're like, oh, I really belong. I'll give two quick ones. I remember early, like sometime in 2016, it was like my first, it was like maybe like second time at Drake's house, and it's like me, Drake, and like party next door, and we're just like talking. I'm like outside, I'm like, wow, this is literally my playlist. Well, especially Drake, but like my playlist from college. Like we're just having a conversation, and then pinch me, I can't believe I'm in this room. Probably that like LA Reid, like we're at LA Reid's house, where it's like Usher, Scottie Pippen, Kim, Kanye, and Chloe. No, Courtney. But your pinch me,
I
and then
don't,
you're
I
like,
don't,
oh, I belong.
um, um,
Yeah, you can't say it's too
no, it's nothing. Like I don't have a pinch me. I
well,
have
that's
no
good. That
pinch me
means you've
moments.
all well, that's because you've been there
And
since you were 13. So you've
yeah, I'm
always
like,
been
and
that
I
person that belongs.
belong. I belong. I was at a party in college, and I was dancing, and Janelle Monáe, who is a good friend, she's like, "That's one hell of a woman," and they invited me to their house. Like it's all of Wonderland, it's like a compound, and that became kind of like my safe haven during college.
Wow.
Um, So I would say that's like one of my like, oh, I belong here. Like it was literally became like my one place of refuge.
Okay, final question before you can tell the people where they can find you. Thing you're most proud of that you worked on. I think for me, it's probably The Simpsons. I guess Blackish. I mean, well, I don't want someone to see this and be like, "Oh, you're not proud of Blackish." I think obviously I am, but The Simpsons obviously has this like iconic thing. Everyone's like, "Oh, they predict
Legacy, yeah. I mean,
everything."
those are
Like,
both.
it's yeah.
You've been a part of some legacy. I honestly, I am very proud to just have served the Black women that I have. There's not a one singular project, but to be able to uplift their work, their stories, their vision has been one of my greatest honors.
Amazing. And where can people find you, like online? And I guess
You
when
can
you went
find me
viral,
everywhere.
you went on Twitter, right? You
On
went viral
Twitter,
on
yeah.
Twitter.
You can find me on Twitter for who knows how long at Maura Chanz, MauraChanz. And I'm Maura Chanz across everything. My website is Maura Chanz. My email is Mara at Maura Chanz. Everything, any place you can find people, I am Mara at Maura Chanz.
All right, yeah. Send her all your amazing scripts, and she's gonna have the next just gigantic production company. But thank you for
I'm
taking the
trying.
time.
Of
Oh, thank
course.
you. Thank you.
I'm excited. I haven't done a podcast in a minute, and what greater than to do one with my good friend. So
Yeah, and she's
honored to
very
be
busy.
here, and thanks for having me.
Oh, you're welcome. She's very busy. She has a meeting probably right
I
now.
do.
So,
I do
all right.
have a meeting literally in 1 minute.
All right, later.
Thanks.